Hello, my name's Kingsley Singleton and welcome to this digital photo video lesson. If you want to add a stylish reflection to one of your still life shots but don't have the time to do it in camera, there's a quick and easy way to achieve a similar or even better effect in Photoshop. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can use the Layers palette, either in Photoshop or Elements, to copy and flip an image, then add some blur and darken it to produce a stunning digital reflection. As you can see from the example image here, it really lifts the shot and adds some extra sparkle to the scene, so it's definitely a trick that you'll want to try on your own pictures. But the really great thing about this effect is that it can be used on pictures you've already shot. So once you've found one that you want to use, like this old medium format camera, you can get started and follow along with me. Alternatively, if you want to use the same picture as me, it's on the CD and it's called camera.jpg. So let's close down our example picture, load up camera.jpg, and we can get started. Right, so the first thing we need to do is make a bit of space for our reflection. We don't have room for it down here as the picture stands, so what we need to do is increase the canvas size. To do this, come up to Image and then down to Canvas Size. If you're using Elements, you'll need to go to Image, Resize, and then Canvas Size. Now in here we want to extend our canvas downwards, so the first thing we need to do is click in this top center anchor point. And that means that any canvas we add is only going to be added downwards, you see. Now we want to roughly double the height of our canvas, so we'll just highlight that and put 50 centimeters in there. And as we extend it, we want to turn it black. So next to where it says Canvas Extension Color, just click on that downward facing arrow and choose black. Once you've done all that, hit OK. And if we scroll down, we can see that the canvas has been elongated. What we do have though is a slight problem here. We have this little hard line here, so we need to soften that out. And the way we're going to do that is using the brush tool. Give that a click in the toolbox, then make sure that black is set as your foreground color. To do that you can either press D on the keyboard or press the default color icon down there at the foot of the toolbox. Then we'll increase the brush size to about 400 or 500 pixels. Make sure it's got a nice soft edge by dragging this hardness slider all the way down to 0, and then click and drag the opacity up to 100%. And then all I'm going to do is just paint over that old edge of the image there, the part where we started to extend the canvas, and we'll get rid of that nasty hard line. So now we've done all that, let's come back out to a full view with Control and 0 on the keyboard. And now we're ready to create our reflection. And the way that we do this is first by using the rectangular marquee tool, so give that a click in the toolbox, and then we're going to drag it out right over the camera, just like that, just taking in all that area around it too. Something around about there will be absolutely fine. I'll just click and drag that down ever so slightly. And then we'll press Control and J on the keyboard, and if you take a look in your Layers palette there, off to the right, as soon as I do that, we get a copy of those pixels that we selected appear as layer 1. Of course, if you can't see your Layers palette, just come up to Window and down to Layers and it'll pop on screen. And now, because our reflection needs to be effectively a mirror image of the original subject, we need to transform it. So it's up to the Edit menu, down to Transform, and we'll come all the way down to the bottom of the list and pick Flip Vertical. And now we just want to drag it down a little bit. We can just hold down the Control key on the keyboard as a shortcut to the Move tool here. So just press and hold Control, and then we'll click and drag the camera downwards. As you do this, hold down the Shift key on the keyboard as well, and it'll keep it aligned with the original. Something around about there should be okay. And although we've blocked out a little bit of the original there, that'll come back when I change the blending mode of this layer. So back over in the Layers palette, making sure that layer 1 is still highlighted in blue there, just click where it says Normal, and from the list pick Lighten. And then we can just fine tune the positioning there of our camera, and we'll move it just so that that little yellowy orange bit there just sits very close to one another. That sort of thing should be okay. So we've copied and flipped our original, and we're starting to get something that looks a bit like a reflection, but it's not quite working, is it? We need to do a few more things just to really make it that bit more sort of convincing. The first of them is a problem which you'll notice here around the back of the camera. The parts of the reflection aren't quite close enough to it. It doesn't look very natural. What we want is these parts of the reflection to follow the original and make it look like it's really sitting on a piece of glass. So we need to move these sections up somehow, but we need to leave these ones here just where they are. We need to distort it somehow. How are we going to do that? Well, in the full version of Photoshop, we're going to use something called the warp tool. And you'll find it along with all the other transform tools under Edit, down to Transform, and pick Warp. So we'll just click and drag this corner handle upwards, just a little bit until it sort of reaches a little bit closer to the original there, so it seems to follow the line of the camera. And just down here, you see we're pushing it a little bit too close now, so we can click and drag that down. The idea here is just to keep warping it very subtly until you get the kind of look that you want, really. It doesn't really matter if it's distorting slightly. After all, a reflection is never going to be exactly like the original. So we'll just click these corner handles and keep just roughly dragging it into position. And we'll do the same over here too, just so this far end kind of comes upwards. Starting to look okay. Keep moving those ends up and dragging the middle part down. And something roundabout like that I think is starting to look pretty good, certainly much better than before. So we'll hit return on the keyboard to finalize that transformation. And if I just go backwards and forwards between the two versions, you can see that's our before effort, before we transformed it, and it's kind of just looking rather like the reflection's kind of been plonked down there. It's not really lining up with the original, and our after version is a lot more convincing. Really looks like it's sitting below it on a sheet of glass now. And if you want to know more about the warp tool, you'll find a whole video lesson dedicated to it in this month's Photoshop Masterclass. Trouble is, for Elements users, there is no warp tool. So right now I'm just going to show you a very quick and easy workaround using the regular transform options. So let's just switch into Elements very quickly and I'll show you how it's done. So here we are at a fairly similar point to the one we were at in Photoshop. We've managed to copy and flip the subject in the same way, but we need to do something about the alignment down here. We can't use the warp tool, so instead we're going to use the regular transform tools. Come over to the rectangular marquee tool and give that a click. Then we'll click and drag out a selection over our reflection to round about there. What we're going to do then is stretch up this side and this side independently. Sounds a bit complicated, but once I do it, you'll see what I mean. So with our selection made, we want to enter free transform mode, and you can either do that by pressing Ctrl and T on the keyboard, or by coming up to Image, Transform, and picking Free Transform. And once the bounding box appears around the edges of those selected pixels, what we're going to do is click on this top left corner handle, hold down the Control key at the same time, and just drag that upwards. Now we need to drag it up in a perfectly straight line, so also hold down the Shift key as you do it. Up to something around about there should be okay. Release the mouse button. And then because we need to align these two sort of wheel things here, we'll also just click and drag out this side handle. Now that side's kind of starting to look okay to me, so we'll click the tick to make that transformation. Then come up to Select and down to Deselect to get rid of those marching ants. But before you do, just make a rough note of where that line of pixels is, because we'll be wanting to make a very similar selection in a moment. So hit Deselect. We're still on the marquee tool, and now, as I said, we can select the other side of the camera and do exactly the same thing. Control and T on the keyboard to enter free transform. I'll just shift the layers palette out of the way there, and then we'll hold down Control and Shift just to drag that top right corner handle this time out. Make sure you get the sort of the angle okay there, and then click and drag that side handle out too. And just like that, we've got a very similar effect to the one that we achieved in the full version of Photoshop using the warp tool. Now you'll be pleased to hear that the rest of the tutorial is the same in both versions, so I'll just go back to the full version of Photoshop and we can get on with it. Now the next thing we want to do is just fade and darken and blur our reflection ever so slightly, because we don't want it kind of to be as prominent as the subject. We want it to support the subject but not be the focal point of the image. The first way we're going to do this is simply by dropping the opacity of layer 1. So come over to your layers palette again, click next to opacity and drag that down to about 75%. We're going to darken the reflection a little more towards the bottom, but for the moment just setting that to 75 should be okay. The next thing we want to do is add some blur, because we don't want the reflection to be quite as distinct as the original subject. We're going to do this gradually though, because the parts of the reflection closer to the subject would naturally be kind of sharper and clearer. So it's back to the rectangular marquee in the toolbox, and this time we're going to click and drag a selection out over sort of roughly 2/3 of the camera's reflection. Something about that should be okay. And then we want to soften the edge of our selection, because we want our blur to be applied gradually. So it's up to the Refine Edge button in the options bar, give that a click. And we want some really broad feathering here, so we'll click and drag the feather slider all the way up to its maximum setting of 250 pixels. And by playing with these previews down the bottom, you can see sort of just about where that blur will start to come in. That might be a little bit too high, so we can just click on that contract slider, just bring it down ever so slightly. That's looking okay, so we'll hit OK. And then to apply the blur itself, it's up to Filter, down to Blur, and pick Motion Blur. Now the left to right blur that's been automatically applied there doesn't seem to be looking too good. What we want is a more vertical blur, so we'll just click and drag our angle round to 90 degrees. It's also looking a little bit too extreme, so we'll click and drag the distance down to about 100 pixels. And that's just giving us this kind of pleasing softening of the reflection as it falls away from the subject. That's looking pretty good to me, so I'll click OK to exit the Motion Blur palette. And the final thing that we want to do is darken the very lowest parts of the reflection, so it seems to kind of ebb away into nothingness. We've already got a selection active from our Motion Blur effect, so there's no sense wasting that. And we know that it was feathered by 250 pixels, which is the sort of feathering that we want to use in our darkening anyway. So all I'm going to do is just click and drag that downwards to about there. And then we'll come over to the Layers palette again, and we'll click on the Create New Adjustment Layer icon, pick Levels from the list, and then making sure that Preview is ticked so we get a real-time view of what's going on, we'll click and drag the black and the mid-tone slider over to the right. That's kind of looking okay, but it'll also help if we click and drag the white output level over to the left a little bit too. So we're just darkening that reflection as it sort of moves towards the bottom of the frame. And once again, really this is kind of all about giving a little more prominence to our subject and just letting the reflection kind of support it, rather than the picture being all about that reflection. So once you've found something you're happy with that darkening, we can just click OK to exit the palette. Taking a look at the final image, I think that the reflection could probably stand to be knocked back by maybe another sort of 20% or so. And that's looking pretty good. And then we'll want to lose this blank area at the bottom. So we'll come over to the crop tool in the toolbox, and we'll just click and drag that out to something about there. It's looking pretty good. Double click inside the cropping marquee to apply the crop. And if we just take a look at the before and the after of our digital reflection there, you know our camera's just kind of floating in nothingness, but with our reflection applied, it really supports it and makes it look a lot more interesting. So now we can either flatten the image or we can save it with our layers intact. I'm more happy here, so I'm going to flatten it. But if you do want to retain your layers and come back and work on the composition later, just make sure that you save the file as a Photoshop. That's a .psd file instead of a JPEG. As I say though, I'm quite happy, so I'm going to come up to Layer and down to Flatten Image. And there you have it, a perfect digital reflection. Very quick and easy to apply, and virtually guaranteed to improve any subject you use it on. Okay, hope you found that useful, and I'll see you next time.